Like, oh no, did that hurt? And you have to catch yourself. Like, let's not implant any ideas around anything, right? But it's hard as a mother because, to your point, your own experience leads you to define things how you see them, and then you say, oh no, that must have been awful. And it's like, well, maybe just ask, right? Because maybe
So, I know I keep interrupting, but this right here from what Gwyneth just said, this is the whole reason, the notion of people, like, her mentality that she has of not telling your children, just for the example, not telling your daughter that it may potentially hurt, the mere fact that you're second guessing even saying something like that is part of the reason why some parents are now saying, oh, I'm not going to assign my child a gender at birth. I'll let my child decide what gender they are when they get older. That's progressive. You're setting your child up for fucking mental confusion is what you're doing. There are 9 billion plus people on this fucking planet. You mean to tell me all 9 billion people are going to treat and respect your child's desire to choose their gender at will? Okay. And I think that's why Gen Z has some of the highest suicidal rates compared to all generations in general. Like, I wonder why.
Wasn't that bad?
Right.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people don't know their bodies enough, and they surely don't know the bodies of people that they're having sex with. So sometimes things can be a little uncomfortable. If you're not really aware of how somebody's body is, how it functions, how to get pleasure. You know what I'm saying?
You're so correct.
Of
That's
course.
what was left out in my conversations with my mother. Well, I never heard the word pleasure come out of her mouth. I never heard none of that.
Yeah. I want to say, once humans can fix the way that we perceive sex and just anything that has to do with relating to one another, the world's going to become a better place.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, guys. I got a dip.
Okay, babe, I'm ready.
Have a great show.
Go kill it.
Thank you.
Mwah.
How old is she?
She's 20.
Almost 21.
She'll be
How
21.
is she so wise and smart? She's like a Buddha, like
Right.
wisdom, like
Yeah.
pouring out of this child.
I know.
She
She's
was just
something
born
else.
old. She's
a
always
whole
been that
soul.
way.
So Gwyneth, like with group and everything, I know it's wellness and
That's what I thought that's
Food
all it
and-
was.
but I mean
Yeah,
now
beauty, yeah.
you're like this kind of sex goddess.
Well-
like, I mean, like, what made sex for you such an important subject?
Yeah. I really do believe that you can't really talk about women's wellness without talking about her sexual wellness, and that's a really important pillar in overall wellness, because so many of us throughout our lives have experienced some level of disconnection from ourselves because of trauma or, shaming or from partners. And if you have a woman who's disconnected from herself, or she feels shame around her sexuality, or she's not comfortable in her sexuality, it's like she's cut off from her truest self. And sex is so interesting because it's this microcosm for what's going on holistically in your life, right? Like, if you're really honest with yourself and you've really done work on yourself, generally you can be really close to yourself in a sexual way. And if there's a block, you can say, oh, there's a block here, or this doesn't feel right to me. And I just felt like it was so fascinating that it's still taboo, that we even me, like, even though I'm helping facilitate all of these conversations, I'm still shy to talk about my sexual stuff,
Because you don't air out your partner's business unless there's mutual consent about that. It's messy. That's one of the main reasons why you don't just openly talk about your sex life. It's because you're usually having sex with someone else, right? And so of course it feels weird to talk about your sex life. You know why? Because you're talking about a whole nother person. You're bringing another person's private business out into the forefront because of what you want to do. This is an entirely other person's life, and like women are having issues talking about, you can't talk about sex. It shouldn't be such a bad thing to talk about sex. And it's like, it's not. When is it? It's not a bad thing to talk about sex, especially in our generation, especially in the culture in 2021. What the fuck are you talking about? The fuck are you guys talking? I don't understand where they getting this shit from. Sex is everywhere. It's always been everywhere. What? You mean to say that people don't give you as much attention for talking about sex as much as you would want to? Is that why you think that it's not okay to talk about sex? Because it doesn't give you as much. I don't know. I just don't understand. Who's saying it's bad to talk about sex? Where have you gotten it from? Maybe it's the places that you're talking about sex. You don't say you're fucking like there are certain jokes that you give to certain people. Same way that you have certain conversations with certain people. Just because everyone isn't openly accepting your sex talk doesn't mean that it's not okay to talk about sex. You just didn't read the room, motherfucker. Like, what? I just don't understand this shit.
So it's like, how can we start to create a conversation where we can just eliminate shame from women's lives? And there's no better place to do that than around sex, I think.
Yeah.
We can't underestimate how much pain is.
I've always wondered, where are the bases of these conversations coming from? What is the mental point of origin? She said, we can tackle the shame for women in general if we can revolve it around sex. What? I just don't understand this. First, women want to talk about how there's a patriarchy and it's a double standard. They don't want to talk about sex. They talk about how they're over-sexualized, how they're always objectified, and you want to tackle shame in general from women by talking about sex? I don't know. I must be missing something. Somebody in the comments, like, tell me, man. Like, I don't understand. How is this going to help improve the state of women? And it's because women care about what other women think. What about what the men think? They don't care about what men think. Men, we are basically. So Kevin Samuels, for instance, and then in the Bible and stuff like that. In the Bible, it says that women are supposed to be the helpmeet to men. It's actually the opposite. In nowadays, like today's culture, women see it the other way around. Men are an irritant. They're like a fly in the room that needs to be, that's too big to squash. They'll get in trouble, so they're trying to please it, ease it for a little bit, but they're annoying. Men are convenience for women, is what it's like. Because it's like, you know what, let me just finish to see what she has to say. Maybe